What's up, guys? Welcome to the Bearded Jeeper podcast. In this episode, we interview the owner of Trailhead Off-Road and talk about his Cal induction intake. And we also talk about Jeep Cherokee builds and much more. All right, guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Bearded Jeeper podcast. And today I have a very special guest from Trailhead Off-Road, Mike. Why don't you go ahead and take a second, introduce yourself, Mike, and let us know a little bit about the company.
Gotcha. I'll kind of go back a little bit. Basically, originally, I was like a lot of people probably listening, into cars, got into Mustangs when I was really young, and then moved back up to Pacific Northwest where it rains and it snows. And I realized, that the Mustang's just not really going to cut it in the winter. It struggles with a little bit of light rain,
Yeah.
So that's what got me into Jeeps originally. So 20 some years ago, and I bought a Cherokee, and then things kind of snowballed from there, just like they did with the Mustang, and started lifting it. And this was back in the day when, 3-inch lift on a Cherokee was a big deal. And they said, don't go over 31-inch tires. And, it was, if you saw a lifted Cherokee, it was like the, once in a lifetime thing. It was just rare. And so from there, you start kind of looking for parts. You can't find them. And originally, we started building taillight corner guards for Cherokees. Did some custom suspension work and flat belly skid plates and bumpers. And then eventually got sick of running snorkels and up in the Northwest where we do water crossings, and came up with the the cowl intake. And that's really where we've kind of focused our attention for the last 10 years or so. So,
So how long have you had like a company? How long have you been in business for?
We started in 2004. And then actually, like I said, we got into a lot of hard parts, like a lot of people did. And then started building the cowl intakes. And then we actually shut things down for a couple of years. And it was kind of a funny story. Went in to look at the old email and realized how many people had been emailing asking about the cowl intake. So ramped things up about 6 years ago again. And we've just been, every month, it seems like we sell more than the last month.
Well, that's a good business problem to have, that you keep selling more and more. And hey, look at that good mug you got going on right there, Bearded Jeeper mug.
I had to break that one out for you.
I appreciate it. So what made you what got the design to be putting the air intake into that like cowl area? Because that's genius in my opinion, because that keeps it away from all the hot engine stuff. And anyone who hasn't seen it, it basically takes the intake and puts it in that little front cowl thing right below the windshield where there's a bunch of free space. So how'd you come up with that idea?
Well, cowl induction has been around since the late 60s, 70s, with cowl induction hoods that would draw air in from that base of the windshield. So the premise has been around for a long time. But honestly, years ago, I was running a snorkel, and I'll kind of back up, and this will probably get into something we might talk about later, but years ago, we did a Rubicon run, ran the Rubicon Trail.
Yep.
And we ended up doing some welding using a couple of car batteries and jumper cables, which led me to purchasing a Ready welder. I don't know if have you seen a Ready welder before?
Yeah, those things are really awesome. I want to pick one up.
It's seriously one of the most amazing things. I've used it like 4 times, but those 4 times are worth every penny, right? But one of the things you need is multiple batteries. So I said, well, I want to have more than one battery on the Jeep. I want to run dual batteries. But I was also already running 2 air compressors. So the Jeep has a mini York on it, dedicated onboard air. So it's already cramped for space. And with the snorkel, I tried to come up with a way to put an inline filter. I tried a Honda Air, I mean, all these different ideas, trying to give myself the room, but still keep that snorkel. So I just kept fighting it and fighting it. And eventually, with the next Jeep, I said, I'm not going to mess with the snorkel. I'd seen a couple of people run a variant of a cowl intake before, but there were a lot of drawbacks to the ones that I saw. So when we designed this one, we wanted it to be accessible from the engine compartment. We wanted the filter big as possible to and also to be oriented in a way that didn't block the entire cowl. So it just ended up, I mean, honestly, I guess the short answer is I wanted another battery and go.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a good place to put it, so you can have a. It frees up quite a bit of room not having that big stock airbox in there.
Yeah. And most people, not to get into it too far, but we haven't run a dyno on it because most of the gains that you would get would be at speed. Just where you really start getting the air forced down into that cowl. But we get just a ton of emails from people that say, I don't have to downshift going up a grade anymore. My idle smoothed out, just a lot of really good responses with regards to performance. But really, the intent was for more room and then to move the filter up because the normal or the stock intake is right there at the grill. So when you dip into the water crossing, which usually you dip in from the
Sucks
driver.
it right up.
Yeah. So it moved the filter, freed up some space under the hood, and then, it does get cooler air. So it's three major benefits, I guess. But yeah, it's worked out great. So no complaints.
Yeah, I've definitely heard a lot of positive feedback on them. I've seen, I haven't seen one in person up here in New Hampshire or anything, but people know about it up here, and I've heard people talk about it. And I think it's just a great design. And personally, I'm kind of a little weird, and I don't like a snorkel because I like the symmetry. So I like it to match on both sides. So I'd have to have some kind of stupid dual snorkel set up or something. So this is definitely a good option that I can't wait to try out.
Yeah. Well, soon. Oh,
Um,
and by the way, before you go too far, I do have to tell you, New Hampshire probably has my favorite logo. Well, my favorite slogan of any state, hands
oh
down.
yeah,
Yeah,
live free or die.
die. Yeah, every time I see a plate for that, I'm just like, it's amazing. I hope they don't ever change that.
I sure hope not, but you never know in today's day and age when people are kind of going crazy and doing all sorts of weird stuff. So one of my next questions was, are you guys working on anything new? Is something in the works, or are you sticking more to the intakes, or are you going a different direction? What are you guys working on?
Well, we did do the grab handles for the A pillars. So, for your tin top vehicles like the XJ, but they're universal, so they could fit virtually anything. But I think we're going to really focus on the intakes. We're finishing up right now. We just did one for the Dub J. We're finishing up one here really shortly for the 4-liter Dub J, and then probably getting into the new Wranglers and taking a look. There's just a lot of challenges with the new Wranglers because the cowl area, it doesn't have an opening or a space like the XJ, the ZJ, the TJ, the Dub J, where they all have a spot where you can get at least part of a filter in. So it's a little more challenging, but for now we're really focusing on those, and then I guess if there's something where we figure out we need to fit something else that we can't fit, I guess, then that could change. But right now, just really focusing on those.
Yeah, that I'd like to see one for my JK, but like you said, there's not a whole lot of room in there. You'd have to almost make a whole box to retrofit in there to actually get it to work. And then at one point, is it too expensive and too kind of outlandish to actually be practical?
Yeah, sounds great. You nailed it. You want a job? Sounds like You got all the right key points right there. So yeah, it'll be a challenge, but we'll see what we can do with it. We didn't think we'd get it to fit in some of the other vehicles either. So it's just a matter of really sitting down and hammering it out with those.
Now, did you have a lot of prototype designs that weren't really as good, or did you just kind of keep going until you came up with something?
The XJ1 was the first one, obviously, and that was, I think it was about 10 years ago, 10 or 12 years ago. And it really, there were a few variants. Early on, the intake tube was a lot different. Um, it was a shorter tube that used part of the factory elbow, and then that evolved into a few different elbow adapters, and now it's been refined to where it's a main tube and an elbow. So there really haven't been many variations of it. Once we got it figured out and just tested it and put some miles on it and dunked it and dumped snow over the cowl and tried to get some frozen water over it and make sure it would run with restricted airflow and all those things. Once we figured that out, it actually was pretty quick and simple.
That's awesome. Now, you already answered one of my questions, and that was what was your first Jeep? It was the Jeep Cherokee you were saying. Now, what is like some of the craziest off-road experiences you've had in that? Just tell me some kind of story. You've got off camber, maybe got stuck, had to stay out all night, something crazy.
So I think probably I've had a few Cherokees. I've had a few Grand Cherokees. Now we have a Jeep J, but probably the worst and best experience, I guess, because aren't the worst ones the best stories, right?
All the time.
So, so years ago, I ran the Rubicon Trail with a group of close friends, which is hands down, if you haven't done it, I would say to do it. I wouldn't say that it's the most challenging, the most difficult, but there's something about starting at one point, finishing at another, and then camping along the way, and then the scenery and everything else, right? Hands down, I think it's a definite bucket list, if you use those words.
Yeah, I got
Um,
to head out there for sure sometime. I haven't been out wheeling out west, but they have a lot of good trails out there.
yeah, it's just really scenic. It's just amazing sights. But so I was running a set of mid arms that a local company had made. Needless to say, the quality was substandard. We found out, and I was running it was an old crossover steering, like a Rusty's crossover steering, which had a dead spot in it, and it just wasn't a great setup to start with. And at some point, coming off of a ledge, I'd actually bent both the front arms,
Ooh.
and it rolled all my caster forward. So I was basically driving a shopping cart, right, with negative cast. Well, the side effect to that was I bent the steering into a U shape. So at some point, it got so bent that I could only turn right. So last half of the trail to Rubicon Springs, whenever I had to turn left, we would basically, I don't know, have you ever used a really old remote control car? And it would
Yeah,
go forward, then reverse, it would just turn the wheels. So we'd back up, go straight, back up, go straight, and finally we'd be able to turn left by basically backing up and turning right.
100-point turn,
Um,
you get there.
yeah, and just driving on the rock rails. And I finally got just sick of the thing, hopped out, tore the steering out, started beating on it with a hammer. And I didn't realize when I was doing this, because I was just like, I can't do this all day, that I was about 50 feet from the campground.
Oh,
So, um, it was really frustrating, but the guy that I was with at the time it was also extremely entertaining and challenging, I guess. So I would say that's probably one of the fondest and worst memories I have. Um, I've flopped and taken outdoors and stuff like that, but I still, for some reason, that one just sticks in my mind.
that definitely would get irritating quick, I think, having to back up, back up, back up, and then finally make the turn.
Well, and the other part of it too was we still had to drive, I think, 1,200 miles or 1,400 miles once we got off of the trail. So we ended up welding part of the cam adjusters to get a little bit of caster rolled in. But even on the drive back, if you turned right, it would immediately turn right, like on the freeway. But you had to turn the wheel about a quarter, maybe almost a half a turn before it would start to turn left. So we had a, like a, I don't know, 20-hour drive that way too. So the whole thing was an adventure, but definitely worth doing. I mean, that's a haul for you, but it'd be worth it. And I know it's easier out there on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast.
That's what I'm thinking, but I personally have never been there, so I can't say for 100%, but it definitely seems like there's a lot more traction. Like there's more off camber situations and what I would call like technical wheeling, but you don't have that. Oh, I gotta get speed hitting up this little hill climb because my tires are soaked in mud first.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you guys nailed it because I was listening to the podcast, um, and I don't remember who it was with, but you guys were talking about the differences and what you're talking about. And I haven't been out east either, but the Pacific Northwest sounds really similar. A
Oh,
lot of wet,
yeah, basically the same kind of thing.
yeah, and you get up on there where you can do something real technical, like in California or Utah or here in Arizona. And like you said, you kind of stick to it. You just don't slide off of the stuff. Up there, it's I think what you have where you get up there and right as you get up, then you slide back down, right?
Yeah, or
And
you
you
slide off just a little bit and it completely throws your line off, or you smash into something. It makes it quite challenging. And I've
yeah,
even
no, that's
been
exactly.
I've been wheeling out in Pennsylvania a couple of times, and they have more like kind of clay to their rocks and or to their dirt. So going up that a lot of times it gets if clay gets wet, it just really slick kind of paste that you can't get up.
Yeah, we've had there was one we went in, there were some there were like tank traps, I guess you call them.
Yep.
And it was like gray clay, but it was like that thick. Like when we got out, I remember I actually peeled it out of the wheel and it came out like a kid putting Play-Doh in something. Like it came out perfect mold of the wheel. And then it wouldn't come off. So once we got on the hardball, to get back to camp, you started bogeying, death wobble and everything because you'd have like a pound of clay stuck on the inside of the wheel and it just wouldn't come off. I think that stuff is still on that Jeep, whoever has it now. I mean, that I bet you somebody up in Washington's got a silver XJ and it probably still bogeys all over the place from the clay that got stuck up in that axle.
Yeah, it really amazes me how much the clay just kind of sticks to everything. It's like when my buddy and I were down at Bantam a couple of years back. He went through their mud pit they had um, at their heritage festival there, and they he went through it so many times that I think that was what ruined his transmission because all of a sudden he couldn't shift and stuff, and had to tow home and. Uh, from Bantam all the way back home is like a 10-hour trip too.
So your new rig, you're basically going to relegate the JK to like with camping and commuting and stuff. Is that kind of the plan?
Yeah, my JK is my daily driver right now. If I need to get a trailer for the Cherokee anyway because that's not going to be street legal at all. It's going to be the tires are going to stick out way too far and everything. So I think I'm going to buy a truck and I'm sure I'll get hate in this because I'm going to get a Ford. Yeah, I'm going to get a Ford Raptor though, and I want that to be kind of like a daily driver and tow rig. Then I can do more on both the JK and the Cherokee. But the Cherokee is going to be right now the big boy, the 1-ton axles and 40-inch tires, and it's going to be fun.
It's funny. I got to tell you. So, like I said, I had a lifted Cherokee back in the '90s, right? And And I mean, they literally said, I think I remember one article said, look, you can't do bigger than 32-inch tires on these, right? Like it's just not, you just don't do it. So, when we started going 33s and 35s, and then people started doing, 37s and 40s and all this, it was just crazy. But what blows me away is I remember talking to a good friend of mine, who's still real heavily into the industry. I'll throw it a little, whatever you call it in for him, Trails magazine or Crawl magazine.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and we used to talk about this, and we kept saying, everybody buys a Cherokee, and then at some point they destroy it and they dump it and they go buy like a Wrangler at the time, right? Like a TJ. And we figure the life expectancy of the Cherokees is going to be maybe 3 or 5 years, and then they're just going to be done and you won't see them. And what blows me away is it's almost like there's more of them now than there were 5 years ago. Like it
Yeah.
just blows my mind that people are still buying them. And then it really blows my mind when I see what people are selling them for. I mean, I just would never have guessed it. I figured by now you wouldn't see, but some old guy like me, with collector's plates or something on it, running around. But it's
Yeah,
just, yeah,
get it as an antique plate or something, so that way you can not have some of the safety features and stuff that they require on the other rigs and stuff.
yeah. I mean, I'm blown away, and I just kept figuring, with, obviously there's always going to be a huge market for Wranglers. That just always is going to be. But you figure there'd be a big segment for like the other hardtop stuff, like the station wagons, especially like the Grand Cherokees, because they were V8s. They're still solid axles. They're coil sprung all around, and it's just like I don't know. It just you don't see as many as I assumed you would, at this point.
Yeah, it was kind of amazing when I my first Jeep was a '89 Jeep Cherokee, and then that one was pretty far gone, and I ended up getting rid of that and had a Volkswagen Jetta as my first car. But then I got back into Jeeps, and I had a '96 Grand Cherokee, and back in the day, it was like 32s were big, or 30, like 35s were the real big tire. And there wasn't a whole lot of companies out there making parts for the Grand Cherokee. Like I remember Iron Rock Off Road was one of the big ones, and there might have been a few others, but now if you look at it, there's quite a few other companies that have kind of sprouted up for these Cherokees and Grand Cherokees. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I had a '98 with the 5.9 in it, um, and I went just nuts on it. And so it had Rock Crawler at the time had started making long arm kits. So I had one of the first Rock Crawler long arm kits for one, which was a crazy thing. It was solid arms, super heavy, and put axles in it. Just all, but it was so. I never got the squishiness out of it.
Huh.
Like the I don't know if you're not watching the video, I'm just bobbing back and forth, but the squishiness, because I couldn't get it to. I never got it to drive like I wanted it to on the road. On the trail, it flexed like crazy. It just was nuts on the trail, and it looked really cool. But on the road, I just could never get it balanced. I think's the right word.
Yeah, I think I like a kind of a stiffer ride on my Jeeps anyway, and that's why in the JK I switched to Rock Crawler springs, because they have, at least to me, they seem like they're a stiffer. I don't know if they're a stiffer rate, or how they progressive, or how they word it. But I had some AEV coils before, and I would come off a little ledge, and the whole Jeep would just wobble back and forth like crazy coming off it. And I wanted that kind of like mid ground, and I really like Rock Crawler's coils. They seem to do well, at least in my rigs.
Yeah. Well, this was a while ago, so
Yeah, they've
it,
probably come a little bit from when you wheeled it.
yeah, no, that was quite a while ago, and that thing didn't really get out too much. It did for like a really short period of time, and then, like you said, you're talking about the friend of yours went through a water crossing with it, and vent tube for the transmission on those is not elevated, and it
Oh,
basically transmission at like, I don't know, 70,000 miles or something. And so after that, it was like, you know what, we have the XJ, we'll use the XJ. Leave that thing at home.
yeah, and it's pretty amazing. The 5.9s were kind of rare when I was building my ZJ, because even like a lot of people would try to get the 5.9 parts, specifically the grill, just because it has that kind of like different mesh look to it. And I remember those were going for $100 or more, just the grill of the Jeep. I'm like, how is this worth $100? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, the transmission's different on them too. So it's actually I don't remember the numbers. I think it's a 48 RH instead of a 46, which is like a full size truck, but the starter's on the wrong side. So that case, that transmission case is specific to, I think they made, I don't know, 11 or 15,000 of them. That's specific to that Jeep. So
Huh.
when I transmission, I couldn't order one. I had to go have the whole thing gutted, and you know, just in hindsight, there's a lot of benefits to having something, that is more common, and you can go grab an axle or, a transmission or whatever whenever you need one, right?
Yeah, one of my buddies actually said like that's the good thing about wheeling a Cherokee is like you spend some money on a good set of tires, a good pair of like 1-ton axles, and get some good suspension and stuff. And even if you completely wreck and roll it, you could take all those parts out, go buy another Cherokee for $500 to $1,000, and be on the road again in no time.
Yeah. Or is that what they're going for now, though? I mean, it seems to me like every time I go to look, that I see them up for $5,000, and I'm just thinking that, to me, that's nuts. But
Yeah,
I haven't.
like I've seen them different. Up here, it's if you rust free. Yeah, I've seen them go for like 5 grand or something, because they're rust free Cherokee around here is pretty hard to come by, especially living in the Rust Belt that we live in. But yeah, I've seen them as low as like 500, 700, a bunch under 1,000. But you kind of pay for what you get, and you don't know who's beat it in the woods before you, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Still though, that's still cheaper. I don't know. You haven't really driven that one that you've got now, right? Have
No,
you,
I I got it for free, and it was kind of, it wasn't running. They couldn't get it running. It was missing a whole lot of the front end. I kind of had to rebuild the whole thing. So it's been a while getting it. I got it running, and then I was gonna do a small lift and just get it out on the trails, and then I came across a set of 1-ton axles for a deal I couldn't pass up. So then it kind of, the plans grew, and they keep growing, and I keep getting stuff. So I'm hoping I'll at least have it on its own weight and rolling at the end of this year, but we'll find out.
I'm amazed at how those JKs drive factory, and even lifted, a little bit. It blew me away. Like, it's still miles difference than a TJ or an LJ, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got mine, I drove it stock for a little bit, but then I threw a 2.5-inch lift in it, and no lockers, nothing, set of 35s, and I was going almost anywhere some of my friends on bigger tires and more built rigs were going. I was keeping up with them. And then I just threw a rear locker in it, and I've that kind of was a game changer. I could go almost anywhere.
You guys run through the trails up there. You got a lot of tight trails with trees and stuff, or is it pretty?
Yeah. A lot of what the trails are up here are class 6 roads, what they're classified as class 6 roads. And they're just roads that the town no longer maintains. They might have been old farming roads or logging roads or something. And they're completely legal roads that you can drive on. But a lot of like people try to drink on some trails, but technically you can get a DUI if you're or DWI or whatever it is, but you can get one of those if you're drinking on those trails, because they're still technically illegal roads. You're supposed to be registered and inspected and everything, even though some people don't, and they trailer their rigs to things, but they they're pretty little narrow trails for a lot of it, and some of them you think, oh, it's just an old road, how bad could it be? But they get quite rocky and pretty steep ledges on a lot of it.
I was just thinking, that was one of the things that I was, because those JKs are wide. I mean, they're a
Yeah,
lot wider than a lot of than any of the other Jeeps. I think they're wider than a Grand Cherokee, aren't they? The axles are, I think.
yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
So they're pretty wide. And I just when we were up in Washington, the trails there are so tight, and you come off of somewhere it's been rutted out, and you're tilted, so you end up rubbing along a tree or something like that. And so early on we saw a lot of them where the tops had been caught on a lot of stuff and would get shredded. So I think at first we didn't think they were going to do as well as they did, but they're just, after driving one, I was blown away. I couldn't believe how it drove, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, and the fact that starting out they were like $30,000-$40,000 rigs, and like now even with the JLs getting up to the 50, 60, even $70,000 rigs, that's a lot of money to put on a Jeep and then go take it out in the woods.
Well, there's all kinds of different people, right? So, and that's good. That's what makes the world go round. But
Exactly.
but yeah, I agree with you. I think for the vast majority of us, it's kind of mind boggling, right? So
Yeah, I mean, if I could go right now and drop 70 grand on a brand new diesel Gladiator or something, I would, but no way I can afford that, and especially afford to repair it and lift it and do all the things that I want to do to it.
I just wonder, like, I don't know. I guess it's just certain mindsets, right? Like some people are fine taking something out and banging it up. I always for me, it was like I kind of like buying a used car in a way, just because then I don't have to feel the pain of the first scratch, right? Like, well, it's already got some nicks in it, so when I nick it, like, it's no big deal. But I think if I had something that I'd spent that kind of money on, I think it would be a lot harder for me to stomach that first shopping cart scratch or whatever, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even my JK, it was really good condition when I first got it. It's still in really good condition, but I've got a few dents and dings and bruises. And even so, when I was installing the pandemic off-road rear taillights, you have to actually cut out part of the body to fit the round flush mount taillights in. So that still, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, taking a saw right to the side of the Jeep, but I did it. It turned out fine. I measured 100 times, I think, and we're all good.
It's funny when you say that. It reminds me, when I did first slip yoke eliminator, I did, right, and it was one of those RE hack and taps, and
Yeah.
so I got a circular saw, like a wood saw, and I put a carbide blade on it because that's what they said to do. And I remember climbing under there, and I had a handkerchief over my face and goggles, and I remember getting ready to cut it, and I still remember I basically had like a mild panic attack, right? Doing, because I'm like, what do I do if I mess this up? Fast forward like 2 years later, I'd be like, well, I'll tear the transfer case apart, and after work, and it's totally different mindset. But yeah, that there's certain things, and I can imagine if it was something newer, especially that first, like, cut, and what do
Yes.
you do?
It's like, oh, I don't know. Do I do it? Do I not? Like pulling the trigger is the hard point. But then once you get that first cut, you're like, well, I guess it's here we go now.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I think I liked working on Jeeps so much was with the money. I got into those pretty heavy. Like I got I went a little over the top, right? And but it's different because if you get a scratch or something, it's more it's harder. But once I got the Jeep, I realized if I scratch it, that's okay. If I dent it, that's kind of cool, right? And if I really dent it and scratch it, then I have bragging rights. You know what I mean? It almost like it's just a lot easier to work on because you kind of go, well, if I cut this off, oh well, if it doesn't look right, it doesn't have as much meaning, I guess. So, not to say that I go willy nilly like swinging a hammer at the thing, yeah, but it was a lot easier for me to work on it just because I didn't have as much pressure, I guess, to do it in a certain way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of like what we were talking about on the first episode of the podcast too. That it's a lot easier to work on your project rig rather than a daily driver rig because a lot of us work Monday through Friday or whatever, have the weekend off, trying to get some work done, and it's Sunday evening, and you're like, "Crap, I don't have this thing back together. I have to find a ride to work, or I have to try to slam it
yeah,
back together enough to drive it," and it just gets way too stressful. And that's why I'm glad I have the Cherokee now. I can work on that at my pace and get it done when I want to.
yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing good too. I mean, a lot of people when they work at their own pace end up working at like a super slow pace. Like it's really easy to just let it slide, right? And I'll work on it later, or I'll not get to it this weekend, and then it just kind of sits and sits. But it sounds like you've been staying pretty steady on that thing.
Yeah, I feel slower on it than I have been, but I'm making some real progress now that I got parts coming in, and I got the front frame stiffeners welded on, working on the mids now, and then the rears, and then I got all the brackets cut off the old Sterling axle, so I can wheel that under the Jeep and then get it all mocked up, and then tack on the brackets, get the pinion angle all set, and I got the JK transfer case that I'm throwing in there, so that's all set.
Yeah, no, you're
Making
making good.
progress.
Yeah, I've got a set of axles I'm working on, and I see that, and then there's another guy up here that just put one tons under a Cherokee, and I'm like, I got to get to work on this thing. Like it just gets put to the back burner, when you got other stuff. But so yeah, thanks for the push. Now I got to get to work on that.
So tell people what you're building. What are you working on? What's your project?
So it's a little different. Um, it was kind of a side thing a few years ago that I said, look, I want to figure out, I want to build an axle that's relatively strong, but I want to see if I can do it with a selectable locker, gears, disc brakes, everything else. And my target price was $400, right? So I ended up doing some research, and the rear axle is actually, I think it's right around, we're into it like $200-300 right now,
Right.
and it's out of a Mitsubishi. So it's a
Huh.
Japanese, but it's got 6 lug, big disc brakes, 9.5-inch ring gear, dropout center section, factory 490 gears, factory air locker, and the pinion's actually kind of almost a mid pinion, so it's not a low pinion like a 9-inch. And then the shafts are, I think they're like 1.4-inch diameter, so they're pretty decent sized shafts. So that's the back, and that's basically all done. The front is actually out of an FJ 80 Land Cruiser, so it's a high pinion Toyota axle with big burr fields and 4-piston brakes and all that stuff. But it's a little wonky, but it was kind of a side project and kind of a little side deal, and now it's getting to the point where if I don't finish it, then I've got some answering to do, I guess, people. So I better get to work on it.
Yeah, that sounds really neat. I've always been a fan of the dropout center sections. It's just kind of a easier way to gear it and then throw it back in there. You don't have to worry about working in the differential itself. You can a little bit easier to re-gear on those.
Yeah, we'll see how they hold up. I think they'll do fine. It's going to be like 37s or 38s on it. So thought about going a little bigger, and then there's part of me that goes, it look back and remembers when I was running open diffs, or like you're talking about, like one locker and smaller tires, and it's like you can't do all the big stuff, but everything is kind of fun, right? Like
Right.
there's that point where you go, okay, is this really necessary? Like if you want to run the big trails, yeah, it's probably necessary, right? But part of you is also like, if I just stick to 33s or 35s, I can have a whole lot of fun on like everything. You know what I mean? So it's like that balance, you know, where do you weigh it in? I think 37s or 38s is probably okay, but you know, it's still going to keep me from some of that heavier duty stuff maybe. But then again, maybe I can go run it and I'll just be harder. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like having my JK kind of a more reasonable build, and then that way I can hit some of the local easier trails, and then I could build the Cherokee, build that all up so I can hit the hardcore, like straight up boulder face stuff, like big rock climbs. That's what I really want to hit with that thing.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to.
That's the hopes, at least. I'm hoping, because at first I'm just going to keep the stock 373 gears in it for now until I can save up for gears. But I'm hoping that Rubicon JK transfer case, the 4-to-1, actually will help kind of reduce that down a little, so it'll still be able to turn those big old 40s.
Yeah, I think yeah, that should be good. Yeah, I forgot about the transfer case. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, and it's weird because I've seen that some people have done it apparently, but there hasn't been a whole lot of discussion on it and topics and uh, like video footage or anything. So once I make sure it works, I want to release a video on it and saying, hey, you can do this. And they're still going for crazy money. I got a good deal on mine, but they're going for like $1,000 to $1,500.
Wow. It's really it's too bad that the and I've never dug into it, but I always kind of played with the idea because like Cherokees have a Aisin transmission, right, which is a Toyota transmission. So I was
Right.
kind of wondering, you know, how difficult it would be to put a Toyota transfer case behind it, because on some of those you can swap out the gears and basically underdrive it, so or overdrive underdrive it so that you can run higher gears in the axles, but essentially it's like running lower gears, right? Like the
Yeah.
Samurai stuff, because that seems like just way easier. Like you said, you know, if you could do that and swap out the gears in the transfer case, where your 373s now become, I don't know, equivalent to 456, that's way less work, right?
Yeah, and especially where I've personally never set up gears on my own, so I'd either have to con a buddy into coming over and having a couple beers and setting them up for me, or helping me set them up, or bringing it to a shop, which gets pricey quick. And I mean, I was thinking about it because like Fred Williams on Dirt Every Day, he has his truck Clampy, and that thing has a little tiny, I think it's like only a 4-cylinder engine, but he has it geared down extremely low, and that thing climbs up over everything.
I think it's an axle out of like an old hug truck or something. So I think it's like 717 gears or something.
Yeah, something crazy like that. And doesn't he have like an Atlas in it or something as well?
He might be running. I don't know. I remember. I know the rig you're talking about. It's been in magazines, I think, before too. But it's. I think it might be running like twin cases, which you know that gears them way down too.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I think that would be a good. I will tell you though. I mean, having done gears, you know, it's one of those you get in and do it yourself. You know, unless you can find a really good shop. I mean, I had a shop set up my first set of gears, and I remember we went to pull the carrier out to put a locker in it, and we pulled the cover off, pulled the shafts, and the thing fell out. Like there was no
Oh,
preload. I mean, it might as well. They just threw the gears in there. I don't know that they did anything to set them up. You know,
yeah.
so
Throw it in and make sure it turns, and yeah, you're good.
good to go. I ran a pattern on it. How'd it look? And be like, I didn't say how it looked. I just ran a pattern. You know. Yeah, I would say, it's like a lot of stuff. The more you do, the more you know, and I think that helps you down the road. But you also get really cold weather up there, right?
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, my garage is really tiny, so a lot of times I can't pull the vehicle in there. And up here, we have to have state inspections once a year on our birthday. My birthday being in January. It's always cold. I'm always working on my Jeep in the middle of winter. My JK, I think it was last year or the year before, I had to do exhaust work to fix something on my exhaust before it would pass inspection. So I'm laying on the ground under my Jeep. It's like, I don't know, 10 degrees, if not less, and just cold, windy. And I was laying on my back trying to work on this exhaust. I go to get up and I can't get up. I'm stuck to the ground. My jacket actually froze to the ground. And yeah, your hands just freeze. You're taking breaks every 20 minutes just because you can't stand it. It's rough.
Wait, so what happens if you have like four cars? You have to take four cars in that month to get
Yeah.
inspected?
Yeah, if unless like say your wife or husband or whatever, if they have some that are registered under them and their birthday's a different month, they can get away with it that way. But yeah, say you have four cars and you want them all on the road, you have to register them and inspect them every year.
That doesn't sound very much in line with live free or die. I think they should probably you should probably start a petition to change the laws there with regards to registering vehicles.
Yeah, I mean we have no sales tax, and so the registration really kind of kicks us in the butt. I mean, we have some people have told me horror stories of like they're getting brand new vehicles and it's like $700 to register their vehicle for the year, and that's a lot of money to drop.
That's a huge chunk. Well, and then like you said, I mean, I couldn't. Here we do emissions, right? And in Texas, there was some sort of inspection, but I honestly don't know what they do. They just charge you, to look at it and make sure the horn works, which I was strange. Um, but yeah, I couldn't imagine if I had, because it's not too hard to have a fleet of vehicles. I mean, what do you got? Three, four vehicles? Are you going to have four, or you're going to have one more with the Raptor, right?
Yeah, well, the Cherokee is gonna remain uninspected, unregistered, and everything. It's just gonna be a trailer queen, basically. And the wife's Jeep, her birthday's in July, so luckily we can register and inspect it in July. But yeah, I'll have to do two every year if I want to keep them both on the road.
That's the weirdest thing. You just figure it wouldn't like what a birthday present.
Yeah,
Like
happy birthday! Here you go. Pay us some money.
that's really dirty. I'm not liking that at all. I'm really
Yeah,
feeling.
I wish we were like some of the other states. I'm not sure which ones. Something further down south, maybe Florida and stuff. Like they don't have to get inspections at all, or maybe once every so many years. But ours is every single year, and they've become real stricklers, especially with um, some of the like safety things they for off-road vehicles, like our tires can't stick out past our fenders at all. You have to have them covered. If you have light bars, they have to be covered, that kind of thing. And they're really picky about a lot of stuff lately.
So what would you have to do? Would you have to roll it in there on like some stock wheels with massive flares or something? I mean, would is it like that? Is that what people do?
Yeah, so there's different places. Some people go to kind of what they call lick 'em and stick 'em places where they'll just kind of, oh yeah, I inspect it. But then if someone gets pulled over and they're like, oh, where'd you get inspected? And the inspection place can get in trouble. But I know a buddy of mine who has a lifted Blazer. He took these like pieces of plastic vinyl. It's like roofing almost, and he attached them onto the side of his fenders to extend them a little bit. Some people, like you said, roll in on their stock tires or something, pass inspection, drive it back home, put the big tires back on it. And some places are pretty nice. they won't give you too much crap for being a little bit over. Uh, and others might say, "Oh, well, when you brought it in, it was on stock tires, right?" And give you kind of a head nod and wink and say, "Yep, there you go."
That's crazy. When you were talking about it, I was thinking the other day we were driving and we saw, it was a TJ, and they basically taken the fenders. There were no flares on it. They just stripped the flares off, and he was running. I think he was running 40s, and so they were just. I mean, it was tires all over the place, right? That's all it was just tires hanging out, and it was on bead locks, and they didn't look too well balanced. So they were doing this kind of as he was driving down the road behind us, right? That went by the guy. And when you were talking about that, I was just thinking, like, I don't even know what the laws here are, but I don't think anyone really cares. Like, because we don't have rainwater getting thrown up usually. There's not, so it's kind of like flares don't, or mud flaps just don't have as much bearing, I guess, here because it's dry.
Yeah, most of the cops around here are pretty nice, and they're not going to pull you over for that. But maybe if they pull you over for a tail light out or something, they can give you a ticket for other stuff. But most of the time, they're pretty good. Down closer to the seacoast and stuff, and the bigger cities, they tend to be a little bit more strict on it. But most of the cops are pretty good in New Hampshire about kind of letting it slide unless it's completely obvious that it shouldn't be on the road and it's dangerous to drive kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just great. What other states over there have that full inspection? And I've heard about New Hampshire. I was thinking like Connecticut or something too had one of those real heavy duty, or New England maybe.
Yeah, I think it's most of New England has that same kind of thing. Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Mass, all the same kind of area. So I'm pretty New
Wow.
York, I think, has the same thing. Then the further south you get, some of them are like every 2 years or something like that. I've kind of heard different stories, so be
Yeah.
interested to hear people leave comments in this, maybe if to let us know their state inspection laws and how much they have to get inspected and registered and stuff.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I really love the slogan. Like I was thinking maybe we should head that way. But now you're telling me about these inspections and I don't know. I don't think I want to be doing that on my birthday.
Yeah, but at least we can conceal carry a gun without a permit.
That's like that here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That here, which is interesting, but you can still go get a permit, which is weird. But yeah, you
Yeah,
don't need.
back a couple years ago, New Hampshire was a like a will issue state, they called it, where if you wanted one, you went, and I think you might have had to pay a small fee, but you just had to have the chief of police in your town sign off on it, and they hand it to you, and there you go. Unless they do a small background check, make sure you're not a felon or anything, but then they just kind of switched it over to this new thing, and I like it.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not going to go down there talking about all the other states, but it, when we left the Pacific Northwest, we looked at a few different places. Like we chose where to go, right? We said we're going to look at where to go, and so you start really looking at state taxes, property taxes, certain laws, regulations, and it does factor in, but yeah, I guess probably best not to go down that path and start talking about the non-Jeep stuff in other states.
Yeah, it could go on and on forever. Kind of Jeeps and guns kind of blend together a lot for me, just because I work for Ruger, a gun company, so it kind of blends together very easily. But you never know with today's day and age who is pro gun or anti gun. So
Well, they do. A friend of mine works with uh, AR component manufacturer, gun manufacturer out of. I think he's still up in Washington, but they do some Jeep gun shoots where they'll get a group together and go out, and they'll take some of the full auto stuff and things like that and go out. So yeah, I mean
that sounds like a fun time.
yeah, you're trying to jump in and get in on that deal. probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys,
yeah, that'd be really awesome. I mean, uh, I'd like to even come out west because Ruger also has a plant in Arizona in Prescott, and just kind
okay.
of see what it's like out there because I've never been to the West Coast, so it'd be a neat experience to go out there at least.
Prescott's a cool, like old Western town. Like downtown is still like the old square with the
Oh wow.
courthouse and all that stuff. And it's got a lot of Western history to it. So I've only been once, to be honest with you, but yeah, you should go check. I forgot they have that up there. I forgot about that.
Yeah, yeah. They have we have three plants now. The one up near me in Newport, New Hampshire, the one in Prescott, Arizona, and then Maiden, North Carolina is the newest one.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Yeah. No, you definitely need to get out here, but I don't think I would drive that thing. I think I would tow it. I think
Yeah,
if you're going
I definitely got to get a trailer now. It's way too much to, like my tires would just not like all that driving.
what's what does that work out to for the New Hampshire? You're talking like a 2-3 day drive, probably,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I think it's between 3 and 4 days, depending on how fast you drive and how long you drive each day. And definitely a long trip. I know when I was looking to driving down to Jeep Beach in Florida, it's like a straight down trip. It's like I think you can make it one day, but 2 days is more drivable. But I guess you can rent a like a box car on a train and just sit in there with your Jeep, and they'll go
No,
all the way down to Florida.
no way.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I was like, no way. And one of my buddies was telling me about it. We were starting to look into prices, but I don't remember what it costs. But it's like you kind of just drive in there and you sit in there the whole train ride down. So
I
then
can't
you
believe they like fit in there.
yeah, it's like a hobo living in a train car, I guess.
We years ago we knew a guy in Australia through Jeep stuff, and we were talking about. He's like, come over, and we'll go into the outback, and well, he's telling us all this stuff that he does every year. He goes out for like 6 weeks a year or whatever, right? And so he's like, yeah, do it. So we started looking at like, well, what would it cost to ship our Jeeps over there? And then, this is 15 years ago. In our mind, we started thinking, well, how much food could we pack in the shipping container, right? And how bad would it be to live in the shipping container with the Jeeps, going to Australia? Like we actually started trying to process through like what it would cost, how it would look, how we would live inside the shipping container, how we would not get caught inside the shipping container, breathe inside. We started actually seriously debating it. But that's what that sounds like.
Hey, people are making homes out of shipping containers now, so you could get one of those all decked out, put it on a boat, and head out.
True. Well, if you come out here to go to the Ruger thing, let me know, and we'll take you to some of the stuff out here, and you can see how easy and dry all the rocks are.
Yeah, I'll be like, wow, I can get traction and drive right up this.
There is a lot of traction. And in all fairness, I haven't gotten to see nearly enough stuff out here in Arizona, but it's you pretty much, I think, have a pretty good grasp of it. It's a lot more technical stuff, but you stick to things a lot better for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why you'll see a lot of people out west on like street tires. Basically, they're not the mud terrain tires that we run up here, and a lot of the people down south and up in the Pacific Northwest and stuff run mud tires. But out west is so dry, they don't need all those extra nubs on the tires.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. But you come out this way, let me know.
Yeah, I definitely plan on it, especially when the Cherokee's done. I'd like to take I don't know, a week or two off of work, drive out and camp out and stuff along the way, visit a bunch of different things and just explore and make a nice long trip out of it.
Yeah. Driving cross country is definitely something to put on the list too, I guess. And then you'll realize, why did I drive across the country? There's a lot of spots, but there's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And my uncle lives in California, so he said anytime I want to head out there, and I'd have a place to stay. So might have to hit him up on that when I get out that way.
Yeah, no, you need to do that. That'd be fun. But yeah, yeah, let me know if you do. Or even if you fly out for it, let me know and we can set something up that way too. If you want to drive, you can drive.
Yeah, it's a lot of driving either way. I mean, I got tired even driving to Bantam, which is 10 hours away, and Roush Creek is 6 hours away, which isn't horrible because my wife went to school down in Long Island, New York, so that was about 5.5 hours. So I kind of got used to that amount of driving. But if I drive too much and too long, I kind of get the sleepy drives where I just want to fall asleep while I'm driving, and that's never good.
That Roush Creek that's a pretty good place to go, isn't it? I see that name
Oh
pop
yeah,
up.
yeah, it's huge. They have, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of acres of trails and land, and then there's a town that's like maybe a half hour away that has AOAA, which is, I'm not sure what it stands for. Somebody else could say it's something like anthracite adventure off-road area or something like that. Um, but like that place is just as fun as well, and I would love to live out there, but some of the laws kind of are weird. Like what I found out when you go to Bantam, technically in Pennsylvania, you're not. It's against the law to take the doors off your Jeep, even though everyone does it for Bantam. They kind of let it slide, but during like normal times, they don't like people taking their doors off, I guess.
Weird. Well, so what's the closest thing to how far do you have to drive to go somewhere?
To like an off-road park, or
Yeah.
like to any off-road park. There's one up in Maine that's only like 3.5 hours, I think. Rocky Mountain Terrain Park up in Maine. But there's quite a lot of trails around here that are pretty technical, and then some of the there's some off-roading clubs up here that you can join, and a lot of them have access to private land, so you can go and wheel on these crazy elaborate trails that somebody owns, and because you're part of the club, you get in and get to use the trails.
So you don't have to go too far then. Because when
No,
you were
and
saying like the closest thing was 3 hours, and I was like, wow, that's a commitment.
no, like I literally have trails that are like 10 minutes away from my house up here, but they're like the class 6 roads, but some of those are pretty good trails, and we've seen our fair amount of carnage on the little trails that are around here. But even like there's a pretty well-known trail, Ma Bell in Massachusetts, that's only like an hour and a half away from me, and it's a short trail, but it's pretty wide, so there's a lot of big rocks and stuff, and you get to kind of choose your line and choose your difficulty. So I like that trail. It's a pretty neat trail.
All I can think of this whole time now, since you've been talking about this, is you being frozen to a garage floor. So literally, like everything you've been talking about, all I do is I just keep picturing you frozen to a garage floor, and they're going to be the image in my mind now every time I see a post or anything from you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you saw that one video I had where I had like an inch and a half, 2 inches of ice in my garage floor, like all the way back, and my garage door was frozen shut.
Wow.
Yeah, I just need to tear that garage down and build a new one that's not sunken in it just like my driveway kind of comes down a little bit. There's enough of a little bit of a slope where all the water just runs into it and doesn't run out, so it freezes in there in the winter and springtime, and not fun at all. So hopefully I can keep it dry this year, because I got to work on my Jeep in the winter.
Yeah. Well, you got inspection right in January.
Yeah,
So
that too. Yeah.
when in January? When your
uh
birthday?
the 18th.
Oh, okay. Okay. I got a bunch of January birthdays, so I figured I was put on the list. That's all.
Yeah. Another Capricorn. And
Nice.
All right, but I think that's about it. I just wanted to thank you again for coming on here and being part of the podcast. It's only episode 3, so it could be a little cringy, still kind of working out the details. Um, is there anything else you want to add and let people know where they can find you on social media and what to expect in the future from Trailhead Off Road?
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep doing the same thing, focusing on intakes. You know, I think we really just try to focus on finding something where there is a need that's not being fulfilled. And, you know, the cowl intakes, there is no other cowl intake. There's snorkels and some other things, but nothing fits all of the, you know, there's nothing out there that does all of the things that the cowl intake does. So, you know, for us to come up with a product, if there's a need, we'll go to fill it. We're on Instagram at Trailhead Off Road. We're on Facebook at Trailhead Off Road. And then trailheadoffroad.com is the website. So yeah, just more of the same, and just really appreciate, you know, all the people that bought the kits and all the feedback we get, and you know, it's just all been really positive. So appreciate that, and thanks for letting me come on here and ramble and reminisce, you know, about old times and odd ramblings of this, that, and the other.
Of course, it's always fun. It's always been a good time, and I always like hearing what different people do to their rigs or different things they've been through and experienced. So it's
Yeah,
been really
yeah,
awesome.
very cool, very cool. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a review, leave some feedback so I know you enjoyed it, and make sure you share this with a friend, someone who likes Jeeps, someone who likes off-roading, someone you know that'll like this podcast. Make sure you share it with them. And as always, guys, stay bearded, stay Jeepin'. I'm out.